readers, my name is Charity, the host of Birchivert Reader Podcast. I'm introverted, but willing to talk about fantasy books. On this podcast, I'll do book reviews, author interviews, and fantasy book discussions. Come join me every week as I explore new realms and talk to amazing people. I am with Bookish McGee, a bookstagrammer. We are going over the phenomena of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I love fantasy romance, don't get me wrong. But it does seem like her tone, I don't know if this is author purposely doing this, but once she started officially being with Xandon,
yeah, I don't know.
Her whole personality felt like it shifted. To this, I'm strong, to this now I'm lovesick, sappy. And I don't know if that's purposeful. I'm kind of hoping it's purposeful because, you're, 18?
She's young. 18? That's exactly how I went for it in my head, is that she's really young.
So she's caught up in the romance of this new love, it's this new feelings. So I'm kind of hoping that's the tone that the author created, because I just felt like there was a shift in mindset.
Yeah. I feel like it's definitely a driving force, and all of a sudden that was a stronger bond, because she was definitely still very, wanting to protect everyone and at the end, it wasn't just about him. But I do understand that when she started the book, she was very I don't want to say career focused, but I guess in this world, in this world, that's kind of what she was. She was very focused on her goals and what she wants. And then along the way, this has kind of brought in some, obviously how it ends, it's only going to make it more of a possible, I'm going to forsake all my stuff and go this way, But I put it up to her being very young, and this being the first time she feels like she's been in love, and you can get kind of wrapped up in that, especially in the beginning. So that's what I've kind of I've just accepted that that's going to happen with kind of really young FNCs. It seems like it always happens. It happened in ACOTAR. It happened in it happens all the time. And I have to remind myself that these are teenagers. They are young. I don't remember how old Violet is, but I remember it was young.
Yeah.
And I just have to keep reminding myself, they're young, this is probably the first time, and okay, let's just go with this fantasy world. But I do agree. It's just that's kind of how I just accept it, I guess, now.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
Yeah, I'm just well of my years, so... I can imagine, if I was, at that age, that it would be just, I'm involved. Oh, I wish I could be in love with that. And then now that I'm older and I'm in my own relationship and stuff like that, I'm just oh, it's infatuation.
Right. It's okay, cool. It's all right, settle down a little bit.
So I'm trying to remind myself now that, I'm older now, and I'm definitely, different perspective. So I'm trying to remind myself that if I was in her shoes, what would I be thinking? How would I be feeling? So yeah, it was hard at first, but at first it's really though?
Yeah. So. I always have to remind myself, and that's one of the reasons why I think I didn't get past the 6-9% is because I was ooh, this is going to be a young FNC. I got to wrap my head around that.
Right.
And it's not that there's anything wrong with young FNCs. It's just traditionally they are written in such a way. And so there's even usually cattiness along with younger FNCs. That wasn't the case here, which I really liked. But generally, there's automatic tropes that come to your mind. I've kind of got to prepare myself for that mindset, and be in that mindset whenever I read it. So it would have been cool to have an older FNC, but I liked the story and I like Violet.
I think it was well done in that area.
Yeah.
It was, even though there's technically in that world cattiness, but there was more substance behind why they didn't like her.
Yeah.
It's not just because, oh, you're with that guy, I don't like you.
Exactly.
It's because her mom killed their parents, situation. And they're well, we're treated as punishment of our parents. I'm going to do the same thing to you.
Exactly. Yeah. She's not singled out or hated because of being wanted by a man. She's singled out and hated because they've othered her because of the history of the parents. So yeah, that to me was done really well. I liked that they were mean to her.
Jack character is a big character in this one, and it does seem like he was just hating her just because he hated her, which was funny, but he believed that because she was fragile, they need to take her out. And I think that's why he went after her.
Yeah, there's like the same mindset with the dragon as well. It's like in their culture, like the ones need to be weeded out.
It's not physical weakness. It's more of the personality and character weakness that they go for, which I like.
Well, I just want to say, like, I don't remember, because like I said, it's been a couple weeks since I've read this, but her hair, isn't it like silver, and no matter what she does, it's always silver?
Yeah, I think it's silver at the tips for some reason.
I feel like it never can, like, I feel like I remember that being in there, and I feel like there's going to be something there.
Yeah, because that part wasn't really explained. It was like she says she was born with that because of the disability that she has. Mm-hmm. So, and then we just moved on. Mm-hmm. Part of me is like, what was that magic that happened? So it makes me wonder if something happened with her mom, because in the end, which I definitely don't want to reveal too much, there's a lot going on with her mom that she's not revealing and they're hiding. Yeah.
Okay, just off like to the side, just between you and me. Do you think the mom's going to be a baddie? I think the mom's going to be a baddie. I think she's baddie.
Well, because they found that particular knife in her office, and that knife is the only thing that kills that particular magical beings. Yeah. And I think because Dane knew what was going to happen when they got sent to that land, I think they sent them to kill, I would say kids, but was it the exiles or whatever, the traitors? Yeah. So I personally think that there is something, they're using them to attack the Griffins. Yeah, it's like you kind of got a lot more info dumped at the end there. Like, oh, there's this, there's that. Oh, there's this, there's that.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes with info dumps, though, like, I just will space out. Like, I'll be like, whoa, I'm never going to remember all of this. You know? Right. But I didn't have really those moments in this book, to be honest with you, even at the end. I think maybe it was just like, I was so worried about what was about to happen that maybe I just didn't focus on it. I don't know. I just feel like it was well done, because I usually will zone out if it's too much info, and then I have to make myself focus, you know? And I didn't have that moment of having to go back and reread. Right. But there was more at the end.
Yeah, the author, what I liked is that, there was a lot that was revealed at the end. It's like a reader experience. Like you're discovering it for the first time, because sometimes people can put a lot of information in the beginning and you're like, oh, I knew that was going to happen, blah, blah, blah. Here it's like as if, since Violet's discovering it, knowing more about it and like being revealed to her, you're as a reader as well. Yes. So I think that is done very well, because, you know, I think that what makes a really good book is that you can connect very well to the book.
Exactly. I completely agree.
Obviously, the plot kept you engaged. Other than the dragons, what else kept you really invested with the story?
I would probably say I actually really enjoyed the plot. Like, I enjoyed seeing her journey. I enjoyed experiencing how that happens, what happens, and then the after point of what's going to lead into book 2. I don't know how to say it without giving everything. I wasn't prepared for non-spoilers, so I feel like I've been super spoily this whole time.
I think we might as well accept it and just say in the show notes there's spoilers in this episode. I'm very known for it, but then lately I've been noticing on Instagram a lot of people's like, I hate spoilers. You know, I'm like,
I'm not a spoiler person. Like, that's one of the reasons why whenever you and I did our first one, you'd only had 2 books that you were doing. One of them I had read before, the other one I didn't. So I'm a very like no spoiler person. Mm-hmm. And I can get kind of like rage fitted if I step into a space that I don't know is spoilery. But yours was very clearly like, we're going through this stuff, and you say like there's gonna be spoilers, fam. So if you do not want them, don't continue. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to continue. But I came into the first one ready, like the first podcast we did, ready to not give spoilers. But in this one, I was like ready to talk about all the things.
I feel like a lot of it, if you want to get past the first 25% of the book and talk about it, you have to give spoilers away.
Yeah.
It's just how it is and how well developed this book is.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
I would definitely say that I really enjoyed learning about this world and seeing how to become a writer and what that process looks like, but mainly enjoyed Violet, the way she went through struggle, and the way she handled it. She very quickly kind of won me over with the way that she didn't give up, and she wasn't going to give up, and she was used to adversity, and she was just like, this is where I'm at, and I'm going to try it, and we're going to figure it out, and if I don't, I don't, but I gave it my all, and she was kind at the same time with her friend and thoughtful. So to me, I enjoyed the FMC. It's really hard for me to love a book if I don't like the main character in some way, shape, or form. And she was very easy to like. And I enjoyed seeing the world through her lens. I really liked, and it was something like that I didn't even notice as I was reading it, but there wasn't a lot of cattiness. There was reasons between people like not liking them. And I liked that there wasn't, like we talked about earlier, like some tragic backstory that had to do with like a man of some way. It was different. It was refreshing, I guess. And that's the thing. It was different.
And I think there was a little bit of it, but I think that was just a bit of miscommunication that happened.
Yeah.
What did you think about how this whole school is developed? I remember one saying that if it's so hard to get writers, if it's so hard to get people in the army and things like that, why do you send these young adults into this school where at any moment they can die? One person's like, if they fail, could you just send them on to the army or something like that, or to the infantry that they had at the front lines, why put them through all that rigorous training for them to possibly die because the dragon didn't like them? What are your thoughts about how the whole school structure is set up?
When I go into a fantasy world, I just kind of
just walk in there.
I just kind of accept this is the way the culture is, and learn as we go. I don't take it as like this is like the real world. But I will say that it did surprise me how nonchalant it was that they could just murder the students for no big deal.
Yeah.
I was like, this is very to me, it's more realistic. If you're gonna get someone to be a rider on a dragon, come on now. You got to know you're probably going to die. There is so much that can go wrong in the situation. And we've seen these dragons. They don't have to like you. They don't have to not murder you. Obviously, we've seen stuff, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, these are definitely quote unquote wild, self-actualizing, they can do whatever they want, and they have the means in which to end you. So I get that they have to be tough and strong and prepared to basically die. Do I agree with it and think that that's the best way to do it? No, but that's what it is in this world, and I just kind of accepted it. And then also, if you think about it, most how old are they? I forget. I don't remember.
Yeah, they're 18.
They're 18. That's what I thought. I was that's what the army accepts is 18. They even take a little bit younger if there's parental consent. And this is just a fantasy version.
All right, pausing real quick, and I'm promising we'll get back to it. I love every one of your readers, and I'm in need of your support to help this podcast flourish. Here are the few ways you can help. 1. Subscribe. Subscribing to your favorite platform ensures that you get the latest episodes right away. 2. Rate and review. Leave me a glowing review and rating on your favorite podcast platform of your choice. Your feedback not only is exciting to me, but also helps other fantasy enthusiasts discover this podcast. 3. Share. Spread the word of Booktrovert Reader Podcast. Share these episodes on social media and recommend this book podcast to your friends. Sharing this podcast creates an amazing community of listeners just like you. Make sure to check out the description below to find all my links to my social media. 4. Support through subscriptions. Your support helps me continue making content. In the description below, you will find how to support me on this podcast. By subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing, it will help Booktrovert Reader Podcast get in front of other readers like you. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and make sure to tell me your favorite fantasy book. All right, readers, back to the episode.
So to me, it was a little bit jarring, and I very quickly realized it's not YA. because of that. But it's kind of like Harry Potter. It's one of those things where it's like how like this is such a dangerous atmosphere that it only makes sense that people would actually get hurt in real life. But, you know, in Harry Potter, it's magic. So the magic just like keeps them okay or like whatever. So in this, it's a little bit different, right? Because you don't get your magic until you really bond with a dragon. I don't know. I just kind of accepted it. Is it the best thing for kids? No. But I just kind of go on the trip with the author and with the FMC. So I don't really judge it like that unless it's really bad. Like if it's really like, this seems like dark to me, like then I may have to sit it down and it just may not be the book for me. How about you?
It's like you said, it's like this is their culture. This is their world. So this is pretty normal for them.
Yeah.
To live or to die. And I think it's just for me, I would probably have a very tough time just mentally being prepared for all of that, just because of the fact that just be fighting somebody on a practice ring and somebody like Jack can come in and just kill you just because they didn't like you.
Yep.
I think it's just a tough world because they're doing it for not just because it's fun. It's because it's literally for survival and to protect their world and their country. And I think Violet's coming in very strong with a very strong scribe background, but she's coming in, you know, with the strength. So a lot of it has played a very strong link for her succeeding in this quadrant. It's fun. I like it because you read a lot of school books, things that are set in school, but this one is not school. It's like a boot camp. Not even guaranteed to get past the first year because someone could come kill you and take your dragon.
Exactly. And I thought that was super kind of impossible whenever we found that out, where now she's like double the target and it was like, oh, yay, she's got this dragon and maybe it'll give her like some leverage or some kind of like clout. And then, oh no, just so you know, now she's even more of a target because now they know this dragon is willing to bond with people. I was just like she can't catch her break. Why?
I like how when she got her powers and started learning to channel it, it wasn't like, I'm super great at it, I'm so amazing. You know, she was still like, I think she was privately trained and she was getting better, but she still didn't do very well at it. So I like that a lot. Just someone that's just not very good at it from the get-go.
Yeah, and I guess I liked the way that Violet struggled and like the way she got over the struggles. I guess that's probably the best way. Like
to kind of wrap it up in a way, I did a Instagram story because some people are claiming that this book is so much better than Sarah J. Maas's books. I'm like,
it's the first book. How can you say that? It's just the first book, you know?
Even Sarah J. Maas's books, ACOTAR, it didn't get the better until the second book. About 41% of people who voted said yes, they did agree that Fourth Wing is better than ACOTAR. A lot of people are still on this bandwagon, like no one's ever going to touch our Maas lady.
It's hard for me to say yes when it's only one book, the story's not complete. So yes, this book is really good, but what happens if book 2 or 3, like it's all downhill, you know? So it's hard for me to say yes in any way, shape, or form based on one book, you know, especially since Maas has this body of work in the fantasy world. It's really hard, but they are written completely different. Like their writing styles are different. I feel like it's really hard to compare them.
You know what's actually interesting? I'm looking at the profiles that voted. The people who voted yes, that it's better than Sarah J. Maas, are the ones that are the rom-com romance readers. If you look into the people that voted no, they'll never be more than that. They're actually the fantasy readers. I think that's interesting to look at.
Interesting. Because to me, this book is really good and it is a reread for sure. It's really impressive for a first go in the fantasy realm, and I hope to only see like better and it get better. It was well edited, like there was no throwaways. But that being said, Maas has some really like eloquent, quotable, like hit me in the heart moments that I didn't get from this. I didn't get a lot of hit me in the heart, like I'm learning something as a person or something hits me. from like an emotional standpoint. Now, I did cry in this book. Like, I definitely cried with Fourth Wing, and it was really good. But they're just completely different styles of telling a story. One, I think, is, I guess, yeah, I could see how you would say it's more traditional fantasy. And the other one is more, maybe that could be something, because like rom-coms usually have beats, boom,
Right.
boom, boom, and the pacing is either on or it's off, right? This could be like a fantasy version of kind of like a rom-com pacing for a fantasy version. I could kind of see there being something there, but I mean, I really enjoyed
Evolved.
it. I'm going to have to wait until the series is done before I can say yes or no to it being better. And I honestly, I see this trend a lot where people are like, books that are better than ACOTAR. I think it's kind of a trend, and this is just a trendy book during that trend. So to me, until it is done, I can't base a body of work off of one book.
Right.
You know?
And, it's just I think ACOTAR is one of those books that is just like the OG of fantasy romance. I think, pretty sure there's tons of works, but she really nailed it down. So it's hard to beat this. But like you said, we'll see until it starts developing, because just like Throne of Glass, just like ACOTAR, it didn't really develop until second or third book that you find. And Throne of Glass was the fourth or fifth book.
Throne of Glass took a minute for me to be on board.
YA turning into an adult kind of.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested in seeing how this book and story develops. I'm looking forward to it because the end is a big cliffhanger. I wonder how that's going to develop.
I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. It's a really good book. I feel like it was really well done. I did hear people have kind of like issues with the audio. I had like even some people that I know like reach out to me and tell me, hey, just to prepare you, the audio, like da-da-da-da. I had no issues at all with the audio, but I also listened to mine at like a faster speed. So that could be why I don't. Because the faster the speed is, usually the less you hear like breaths and the less you hear like those kinds of things that might annoy you. So for me, it was great. And I thought the narrator did a wonderful job. I don't remember what I listened to this at, but it's not unusual for me to go like 2 to 2.5 to like even higher if the narrator's voice allows me to. It just depends. I really enjoyed it. I think that this is definitely going to be a series to watch. It's one of those things, I bet she has so much pressure on her right now because this book did so well. And it did really well for the publisher as well. Like the publisher, I think, is Entangled, and I think it's like Red Tower or something. I could be wrong about that. Like an offshoot of Entangled. This is like a huge win for that publisher. So I'm really excited to see what that means for book 2. And I also, from her, because, there's going to be people that are never gonna like, oh, book 2 can never live up. And I feel like 2 is where authors and even movies and like get the most critics, coming in.
Oh yeah.
I'm interested to see how book 2 does. I'm really excited for it, and I think it's going to be great. I'm interested to see what everyone's going to start saying about it.
Yeah, the second book will make or break the series.
Honestly, I'll go, even if I go to book 2 and I don't like it, I will definitely read book 3, because like you said, sometimes it takes a little while and sometimes it's purposeful. You know what I mean? Like they're telling a specific story, and sometimes the tone of books have to change because of it. And so I'll be interested to see where the story is going overall. I like it. I'm into it, and I'm looking forward to it. How about you?
I'm excited. I got that second book ready, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I'm really prepared to cry again. Like I feel like I will fully cry again at some point. I'm not liking that part, but at the same time I am, because she wrote battle scenes so well. Like I felt like, and that's another reason why I like to listen to my audiobooks at a higher speed, is it makes the action even more like nonstop and you were in it. It gives you like a sense of urgency that these things are happening in real time, because they're speaking a lot faster about what's going on. I really was impressed by how she did the battle scene and how long it was and how in it and like completely, like I couldn't do anything else. I had to stop and just listen, you know?
Yeah, you're gonna blink and miss it.
Yeah. So how about you in terms of ACOTAR? Would you say yes or no?
I would say no, as if you're comparing the first book, ACOTAR is the fantasy romance of romances. That's what really made me fall in love with the genre. It like solidified me there. It's one of those books that I will like, oh, I gotta read it again because it's like so amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about Fourth Wing, I'm probably one of those like 0.005% of people like feel like this was good, but this was a little anticlimactic for me, just a little bit in the concerns of romance, because it is kind of pushed as the fantasy romance in a way. I love the fight scenes in it. I love how all that action built up in this book. I didn't care for the romance too much in this one. That romance, it was very predictable. As soon as you're like, that's the guy. ACOTAR, she was in the first book, totally different the guy, and it totally switches because you didn't see it coming, but it was built very well. So that's why I'm like ACOTAR all the way, man. I hope I don't get canceled. But
no, like it's a great book. I think the crux of what you just said was this really isn't romance fantasy to me. This is a completely different kind of book than ACOTAR. This is a completely different kind of book. Like you said, when I think romance fantasy, I think of things like ACOTAR. I think of like Crescent City, but I also think of like, the Bloodgrave series. I think of like high fantasy romance. The romance was there. It did take a second, and I don't feel like the romance was the main plot of this book.
Focal point.
Yeah, I think that it was more, and it was more than a splash, but it wasn't. This is Violet's story about how she becomes a writer, and it's also a story of like the dragons as well. I don't see this as a romantasy. Yes, is it fantasy and does there romance in it? Yes, but I think romantasy, it's more of what the actual story is about. Like the story is these two people's stories. It's not just Violet's. It's not just, you know what I mean? It's these two. How do these two people come to be together? But it's only book one. So in book two, that may completely change for me. And I may be like, oh, shoot, this is romantasy. And like, I see where the story's like going, or I see like how that's leading. But the first book on its own, it's hard for me to like, that is definitely romantasy, or that is definitely like, it's fantasy romance for sure. It's not the main point of the story. And to me, romantasy is usually, that is the story, is the romance.
This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, the romance in a fantasy setting. Whereas this is more fantasy that has romance. So like something like, what is it, Brandon Sanderson's Warbreaker or something?
Right.
That has a dash of romance, but it's not romantasy. It's fantasy with a dash of romance in it. There is more romance in this book than Warbringer, but it's not the story. For me, two different...
True love doesn't save it all.
Yes. For me, it's like two different genres. But I'm only at book one. So maybe that changes in book two and book three, book four. I don't know how many she's going to do. But
she's going to do five.
So, wow, that's exciting. So for me, that may definitely change. But right now, based on book one, that's where I sit. I think that they're both great. I've both given them both 5 stars. They're just different like categories to me.
Yeah, I think it's almost just because the way you described it, it's like it's almost not fair to compare it to ACOTAR at the moment, just because it's a good point. It's not really so focused on love conquering all in this fantasy world, and it's not the main focus. It's totally separate, high fantasy in a way. I think that's how she describes a high fantasy with that romance.
Would you consider this high fantasy? What do you think? Because you're a high fantasy lover, like that's your genre.
Like when you pull it up, so yeah, I would say so, just because of the fact that it's being like lumped into like Aragon, Six of Crows, Shadow and Bone, Lord of the Rings.
I think this could be high fantasy. I don't think that, and maybe it's just the way it was written. Maybe it was so well edited that it doesn't seem like there was as much world building as in other high fantasies that I like kind of like come to my mind, but it could just be that it was so well edited, and maybe I need to do another read through. I do think that it's book one, so we'll see. I think it has the potential to be like an epic fantasy because it is, you know, an alternate world. There's magical elements, there's fantasy creatures, there's probably going to be even more that we don't know about yet. So I can definitely see this being high fantasy. And maybe that's probably how I was like high fantasy with romance elements. Romantasy is more ACOTAR. Maybe that's kind of like my category right now for these two in my mind. I think she did such a good job. This book, it was so, I was hooked.
I think it's really good. I'm excited about how this goes forward.
I definitely believe it lives up to the hype.
Well, thank you for listening to my podcast. Follow me on Instagram for more updates and to participate in future polls. And if you have a moment, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your opinion is valuable to me. So thank you again for supporting me, and happy reading.